you are in your settings, I gotta move some windows here. You can click on My Account, and it's going to pull up information about your account. And over on the left, we see settings. And so that is where we're going to hang out very first, but we will look at some of the other resources too. So one of the big things with Zoom, as we all know and love, is, you know, when they went live this spring, then there was all the Zoom bombings and things like that. And I know yesterday one of the high school teachers had been Zoom bombed, you know, I mean, and so it is a really real thing. And it's something that, especially because I do a lot of, I don't say random teaching, but, you know, I'll be like, hey, you know, here's our webinar, and I don't know who's coming in. It's not like I have a group of, you know, people with a list of names that I know. So you're going to notice, so if you have an education account already or a free account, you were defaulted to a waiting room and a passcode. After September 27th, you all accounts. And so like right now I don't have a I have an education account. I don't use it. I have lots of accounts. And so after September 27th, you will either have a waiting room or a passcode enabled. And we will look at both of those, and really they are awesome. They're an awesome resource for everything. So security has become a really big thing for Zoom. And if we kind of scroll on through, you will see that they've added security as the first tab. And so initially it was, you know, schedule meeting and meeting basic and meeting advanced, you know, etc. But now security is at the top, and they've moved a lot of the security things up to the top under security, which is where they should be. So your waiting room, I really encourage you to use a waiting room. Mainly because that way it gives you can admit people individually, you can admit them all at once, but you don't have to, you can see who's joining in your meeting. And so that is nice. You have that control. And if somebody were to join in a meeting and, you know, you're like, I don't know who, and you guys are all named, I think, right now, but sometimes I get, you know, AB123, and it's like, I don't know who AB123 is. So you can send a note and say, hey, who are you? So that they can either identify themselves or whatever. So because when you're presenting in Zoom, one of the things that I can't show you all the bells and whistles because it's hidden. So I have like all these screens open that you can't see because that's how it is. So when you do your waiting room, you have your settings, which you have to turn on. And then you also, in your meeting, when you're the host, you have this new security icon. And that is in the toolbar right next to your participants window. And that is something that you can enable the waiting room in the meeting too. And so for whatever reason, if you decide you want the waiting room, you can enable it in the meeting or disable it in the meeting if you need to. Where do you find your people when they are in the waiting room? It's the participants. And so where we've been doing the check yes, check no, that's where you find your waiting room too. And so that participants tab is extremely useful, and one that I keep it open along with my chat all the time. You'll also notice that when you click on, so I can admit this person, which is me, and this is how I try all these things out. You can admit this person, or you can remove them, which will remove them from the waiting room and the meeting. You'll also notice that I have the power when I'm looking at the participants tab in the meeting, I can mouse over somebody and I have a lot of power as a host to do things to them. And one of them is I can put them in the waiting room. And so if I wanted to, needed to send somebody out of the room, I can just put them in the waiting room. I have that capability. So the waiting room is a really great tool if you are looking for ways to kind of manage that.
Does that mean like if we're not acting properly, you're putting us in timeout?
Pretty much, yeah.
Okay.
You got it. Um,
Are
what?
there any recommendations for managing students who might be misbehaving? I noticed there's also a remove. Just thinking about maybe what I should tell students before we have a Zoom expectations.
As as a teacher, you have quite, or as the host, you have quite a bit of power. You have the capability to mute everybody. You have the capability to turn off video cameras, and so you have, you know, like if somebody is misbehaving in the classroom, you can mute them and turn off their video camera, but you can't do in real life. So you guys, I had a whole group of music and band teachers do a Zoom session one time, and I'm like, look guys, I can mute you all at once. And I just think about music and band, you know, they're always like, be quiet, be quiet, be quiet. Like the power. So you have that capability to be able to mute and turn off video, but you also can, you can send them out to the waiting room. You can also remove them from a meeting, and there's a setting where if you remove them from the meeting, they cannot rejoin that meeting, and so that I guess. And when I think about removing somebody from a meeting, and I tend to think about them being more of a, like a Zoom bomber, you know, somebody who should not be in my meeting is what I would remove. The waiting room is a great place if you do need to send somebody out to say, you know, why don't you take a few minutes? You can chat them. You do not really have a way to, while you can send them messages, you can't like join them in the waiting room, if that makes sense. So I guess there is, and I'll show you in a minute, I do have a kind of a Zoom expectations from Ditch That Teacher that you can use that might be able to be helpful for you.
Okay, and then one other question about the video management. I noticed in some of the classes I took this summer that we just didn't even, video wasn't even an option because in some of them there were like 2,000 people.
Mm-hmm.
So is there a setting in there somewhere where I can choose to allow or disallow video at all?
Okay, so depending on what you would take, so Zoom has two platforms, or not platforms, but two formats. One is the webinar format and one is the meeting format. And so we're in a Zoom meeting right now.
Oh, I'll bet I was in a webinar.
And if you go to, like, if you're like me and you go to the Rapid City Area School Board meetings for entertainment, they use the webinar format. And so it's really not entertainment. It gives me anxiety, but I go. It's my civic duty. So they use the webinar format, and so the only people we see are the people who are the presenters, and so like you can't see anybody. In the upper right hand corner it shows you how many people are watching, like it says like 500 or, you know, something like that, but it doesn't show you any of the attendees. And so webinar format is significantly different and has different controls than the Zoom meeting format does. And so when, like, we did the TIE conference, we did use both platform. We used both. So in our keynotes, we used the webinar, but in our regular sessions, we used the meeting because you had more like the chat and, you know, all that kind of stuff. You just had a lot more capabilities to do all that in a meeting. And so So that's probably why. But you can turn off video, and we'll look at that setting too. So seriously, you guys, I really would spend some time looking at your settings. And it's just, you go to that zoom.us and then log in with your Zoom account, and you're there. So waiting room, passcode. One of the things that is nice is if you can embed the passcode into the link for one-click join, and that is really nice, especially for students, but I still find I have to share the meeting ID and the passcode separately too, because students will oftentimes try to join different ways, and so it just depends on how people join. And like for us, the authenticated, that means they have to have an account, and we don't typically require our students to have accounts. And so, we typically don't require people to have accounts to join. So those are things I leave off. Scheduling a meeting, those are, these are just, kind of courtesy things. I turn the videos off for both the host and the participant, so that when you join the videos off, you can turn it on. Audio, if you have the free account, you do not have the telephone option. If you have the paid account, you do. Join before host, make sure that's turned off. If the join before host is on, that means that that if I had that on, when you guys click on the meeting, you guys can be there. So when I eventually join, I can have a whole room full of people. And so while I don't mind if there's people waiting, and when I open the meeting, everybody pops in, that doesn't faze me, but it really is disconcerting when people are there without you. So I keep this join before host off, so that your students cannot join until you get there. Of course, if you have the waiting room on, then your students cannot even get in before you let them in from the waiting room. So there's a couple of options there. Personal meeting ID is like your cell phone. That is a number that is associated with you and your Zoom account. So I don't use my personal meeting ID for trainings like this. Not that you guys aren't worthy of my cell phone, but it means that I give it to you, and then if I turn around and give it to somebody else, and you come back and click in, you'll be able to get into my meeting. And it's just, so I schedule separate meetings for every training that I do. But if I'm calling Rosalie, or if I want to touch base with Rosalie and have a quick meeting, I will most likely send my personal meeting ID over for that. So just kind of how you want to use that, but just so you know what that is. Mute participants on entry. I know the high school group had a number of people that do that. I don't, and that's not, I just, people need to test their sound, etc., and we don't generally have that many people. I generally let people come in and make noise until it gets annoying, and then I mute them all in the meeting. So, carrying on. Other things that we want to think about, be aware of, chat. Chat is a huge way for us to communicate, and I allow chat. One of the things that you can do in the meeting is you can find my screenshots. So when we're looking at the chat and the logistics, in your settings, you have the ability to control that. You can turn it on and off. Private chat. I allow you guys to do private chat. If I was a student, I wouldn't. Private chat is not recorded per se, so like you guys could be having a whole conversation and I don't know about it. If somebody private chats me, it is recorded in the meeting chat. I mean, so it's not, I don't do anything with the meeting chat, and if I do post it, I always go back and delete it. But just so you know where the private chat comes out. You can also turn on auto saving. You can send a sound notification when someone joins or leaves, and that is something that when I'm using the waiting room, I do generally do that, just because that way I kind of get that ding if somebody comes into the waiting room. But you can set it up so that everybody hears it, which I wouldn't, or just you, which is what I would do. And then file transfer. File transfer allows you to attach files in your meetings, in the chat, and share files. That is one of the things I don't allow, because and that's for me, for like Zoom bombing and sharing things that shouldn't be shared. I just don't allow it. You can share a link to something in the chat, and I typically share all Google documents or OneDrive documents, and so I don't allow file transfer. So that's me, and you will have to think about how you work with your students and what you need to do. So in the meeting, you have some controls over chat too. We have in-meeting security, that security icon. You can allow participants to chat. You can turn that off. And so that is a really great control. Like, I like you guys to chat. I mean, I'm happy when you chat because you ask me questions and you do things, and so that's awesome. But if your students are being disruptive or not using it wisely, or they're not staying focused because of the chat, then you can turn the chat off so that they can't chat. And then when you want them to chat, you can turn it back on. And so that is something you can do in the meeting too, which is really nice. So you have a control, I guess, both ways. Feedback to Zoom, etc. I don't really, I mean, these are all kind of optional things. I can prevent an individual student from chatting by clicking on their name, and then I can say that you can chat with no one, host only, everyone publicly, or everyone publicly and privately. So I can individually control that. So we'll pick on you, Melinda. I will do a quick screenshot and show you what it looks like. Okay, so when you are in the chat and exactly. I mean, really, you guys, I don't know why you'd ever want to go back to face-to-face teaching. We have so many more legal controls here. No, I'm kidding. So if I needed to, if somebody was acting inappropriately, I have more controls in the chat. And so this is in my chat window, and I clicked on Melinda's name, and then so it'll make it so that I have a private chat. So this is down where I type the message. There's 3 dots. There, if you guys click on the 3 dots, you're going to see that you can save the chat, and so that is a setting that's there for you. I haven't disabled that, but you can individually say that this participant can chat with no one, the host only, everyone publicly, or everyone publicly and privately. And so I can get to that granular control and say, gee, Melinda, and I maybe don't even need to say anything to her. Maybe I can just say, oh, she can only chat with the host only, and just go that route. If I click on everyone, so if I click on everyone and have everyone as the person that this is to here, then I can change the chat on a whim, or not on a whim, but I mean, I could say to host only, or I could say no one, or, you know, that kind of thing. So I can limit it there too. So you do have quite a few options for how you can manage the chat, which is nice. I mean, I think that is one of the things that I really appreciate. It's just, this is where playing around in Zoom is so important, because if you don't, you really don't know how that works. All right, co-host. Co-host is one of the features that you do have to have a paid account to be able to do. Co-host is one of my favorite tools, but it has to be turned on in the settings. And so before you start the meeting, and so if you want to have a co-host, you have to make sure this is on in your settings. I always leave it on in my settings, because I could make any one of you a co-host at any time, which is super awesome. So the co-host is a great feature. It gives them the same meeting controls. The only thing, they do not have the power to set up a breakout room. And so only the host can do breakout rooms. Okay, polling. Polling's also super fun. It is also a paid account feature. So you do have to have the paid account to do the polling. With the polls, you have to add the questions to your meeting ahead of time. So that you don't really have a lot of like on the fly kind of polling, but I will show you how we do that. And I've also linked some resources for you to do that. And then as we kind of roll on down, there's other things, you know, like the meeting toolbar and the Zoom windows and stuff. You can play with those. Screen sharing. This is another one of those that I've kind of managed, because I do worry about Zoom bombers. So screen sharing, obviously that's a big part of how we share information, is through screen sharing. I set it up so that only the host can share, but you're like, hey, wait, somebody else has shared their screen today. How do we do that? In your security, you can change your screen sharing. And so let me, maybe I don't have it on here. I don't have a screenshot of it, but you can share, you can change screen sharing settings in the meeting, in the settings. And so you can click on that everybody can share. And so that works out really well. I don't allow this, who can start sharing when someone else is sharing, excuse me. I have that. I have it as the host is the only one who can start sharing when someone else is sharing. And that's mainly just because I don't want you guys to start sharing your screen, because it can get really disruptive. I want to be able to invite you and say, hey, Melinda, would you like to share your screen? And have that capability. Okay. Disabling desktop screen share. So like I always share my desktop, because I tend to pop from different screen and resource, but you can limit. Annotation, and we'll play with annotation here in a minute. Annotation allows you guys to write on the screen, and so it's so awesome. So we are going to check this out. So let's go back to our screenshots and we'll look at annotation. Where is annotation? Here is annotation. Okay. So when we are looking at annotation, and I had a comment about, you know, I asked someone if they would be willing to share their screen in yesterday's training. And I generally, because I generally just out of respect, I, you know, invite people to share their screen, and say, you know, would you like to share your screen, or would you like me to model it, or, you know, type of thing. It is so much easier if people will share their screens, just because you can see what they're seeing, and it's fine. And as a presenter, I can stop your share at any time. And I have that power too, so that's really nice. Luann, so can the host see private chats? So if you guys are talking about me to each other, no, I can't see private chats. Which is why if I was using, if you guys were students, I would disable private chats. but but if you send me a private chat, I can see the private chat. So if you send it to me, I see a private chat and nobody else sees it. And it is, so yeah. You guys, too many days of Zoom, I can tell it. So anyways, annotation tools. Annotation tools are so awesome because you can, there's a whiteboard screen that we can share in Zoom, but there's also, like, you can use your slide decks and we can annotate directly on the slide decks. And so we have the settings, and so in zoom.us you have the annotation tools, and then you'll also notice, and this is something that when you are sharing your screen, and so this is something that you do want to try practicing, is you can in the meeting, when you're sharing your screen share goes up to the top. And remember when I said you can move that around so you can see stuff. There's also the 3 dots on the end where it says more. There we can disable annotation. And so once you guys find annotation, sometimes it gets a little crazy and people start drawing on my screen while I'm talking. And so I can just quick go in and disable annotation rather than make a big deal out of it. I can just go in and disable the annotation and no big deal. And then when I want you to annotate, I can turn that on again. So those are those kinds of things where it's like, sometimes it's just easier to be like, oh, well, somebody is annotating inappropriately, or they're annotating, I'm just going to turn it off, erase it, and we're going to carry on. And then when I want you to annotate, I'll turn it back on again. So when you're in a meeting as a participant, you're going to see at the top of your screen, you're going to see you're viewing Julie Erickson's screen, and then you're going to see view options, and you should see annotate as an option there. And when you do that, you're going to get all sorts of annotation tools, and I encourage you to do that right now. You're encouraged to annotate on the screen right now. And go ahead. You go. And so what I'm going to ask you to do is I'm going to ask you to use the stamp. And so they have like a heart stamp and a star stamp. So use the stamp and put a stamp beside the instruction on the screen that you find most confusing. So Rosalie, if you go up to when you're in the meeting, if you go, when you're looking at my screen, if you go up to the top of your screen, you should see, you are viewing Julie Erickson's screen, and then there should be view options. If you click on that, you should see annotate. And then once you click on that, you should get a whole toolbar of cool things to check out. Okay, yes. Sometimes it is that resizing the screen and stuff like that. I really cannot figure out which instruction is most confusing to you guys. But you are doing a really great job of annotating the screen. So, so many annotations. As a as a presenter now, there's a couple things that you should see it also, because I think, yes, you'll see that I've allowed the saving of screens with annotations. And so, Melinda, I think it is all or none. Yes, I can disable annotations for others, but I can't do it one at one, or I can't do, I'm not sure why some of yours disappeared. There is an eraser, so maybe somebody's going around with an eraser and erasing things. It's very possible. Yes, the host, and so couple things. You'll notice when you're looking at your annotations that the host, you should be able to save your annotations, and so we could save this as a screen. And there's also on the annotations that I can turn on, hide the names of annotators, and so I can turn on or off that. Right now it is on, so I can see when you're doing it who did it really quickly, but it doesn't stay there forever. So I can save this. I'm going to just quick show you. I'm going to move on to the next slide, and you'll be like, oh wait. All those annotations are there. We did this on the screen. And so if you were going to, if this was something that I was like using as a real quick check-in, or using as a, wanted to use it as a formative assessment, I would want to save this because it's not on the slide, it's just on the screen. And then I'm going, and you guys take one last look at your artistry. And I cleared it all. So now when I move on to the next screen, this is a way we could do an interaction on a slide in Zoom. And so I could tell you guys to, and so obviously we don't have enough, a big enough grid for everybody, but I could have, groups, and I could say, okay, everybody, each group grab a grid and, jot your thoughts, or everybody, in your grid, write your name, and then write one question that you have about today's work. And so where did it save to? It saves to a folder on your computer. It's a Zoom folder on your computer that it saves to. So on this screen, so I could tell you to pick a grid and type in a question you still have about Zoom. And there can be more than one person in a grid. And so this would require you to use the text tool. This is fun. It is fun, I know. And so this is like, Jamboard is awesome, but this is like another opportunity. Do you have the ability to use the webinar format? No, you do not. It's an add-on, it costs money. It's not, if you guys write over each other, I can't see. So you might want to try moving yourselves. See if I can. Do you download? I can't read the, yes, we'll get into the breakout session, breakout room. Can we get it? Yes, we'll do breakout. How do you get a whiteboard? We'll look at that next. Should we download Zoom? I can't read this one here in the middle because it's written over twice. Okay, do you need a paid version? Okay, thank you. So do you need a paid version for any of the things? So here's the deal. the state is giving Zoom to all teachers. So you're going to be able, you'll have a paid version. And so for this, you don't need the paid. What you need the paid for is a co-host. You need the paid for polls. And so, and I would, and I'm not sure about this, should we download a Zoom? I can't read the whole question. So you guys, you're having way too much fun, which is super, super cool. Okay. So this is using the annotation tools. The other thing you can utilize is there is a whiteboard. And so I just opened up a whiteboard for us, and shared. And so that is just like, I mean, it's a legit whiteboard. And so I can write on it, I can do text, we can annotate on it, just like we were doing with the slide. The thing I like about using a slide is it means I can put the background on there that I want you guys to edit on, and so I can have a little bit of structure, and so I can ask questions and things like that. But this is a whiteboard, and so it's just a blank whiteboard that you can write on. So I'm going to go back to my screen. Okay. So one last thing that I like to do with just to kind of see how we can play around with annotations too. So I can use the annotations to get a really quick check-in, or use it as an opportunity to build a conversation. And so what I could do with this, especially with this size of group, is I can say, alrighty, everybody go to your annotations, the top of your screen, and then select one of the stamps and put a stamp beside the garden that you are most drawn to. And so now I can say, okay, so you guys can just put a stamp in the garden that you're most drawn to. Garden C is feeling pretty neglected, you guys. And so now I can do a couple of, oh, thanks, Kathy. Thanks for paying attention to Garden C. So now we can do a couple of different interactive things in terms of I can invite people to say, for those of you that picked Garden A, unmute, or in the chat, tell, give the reason why you picked Garden A. And so now I can get some, you guys can add in the chat, why did you pick Garden A? For those of you that picked Garden B, why did you pick Garden B? That type of thing. And so we can now, or I can invite one of you that picked Garden A, would you unmute and tell me why you picked Garden A? So it's kind of like a self-grouping type of thing. And so you can use that with any image. I just used gardens because why not? B, because you like the water. Yes, yes. I'm curious about the people who picked C finally. But so it can be a great way to kind of start a discussion, especially in if we want to like what do you notice, or and so the annotation tab is when you should see at the top of your screen, you should see a green, you are viewing Julie Erickson's screen. And then right next to that, you should have view more. And then if you click on that, you should have annotations. Warm in the winter. Yes, Garden C is definitely warm in the winter. Did you find the annotations? Nope. Okay. Let's see. So I'm going to just quick take us back a couple slides and then I will bring us back. You haven't lost anything. So you should see a you are viewing Julie Erickson's screen at the top of your screen. And then there's view options and you should get the annotate after that. Do you see that? Yes, you may have to hover. Yes. Awesome. Okay, good. Thanks, Rosalie. Oh, I like the cactus too. Yes. Oh, cool. So, anyways, so this is just an example. I mean, I use gardens because it just gardens are fun. But you don't have. I mean, you can use stuff that's more relevant to your content area. All right. So, rolling back, I'm going to stop. I'm going to clear our screen. This was fun, but I'm going to clear it. Sorry. And I'm going to take us back. Hypothetically, I'm going to take us back. Come on. Back to our settings so that we can whip through. So we looked at the whiteboard too, and the whiteboard is just like, you know, and you can turn that on or off. Remote control is something I keep off. It's just not something I've needed. Nonverbal feedback is where we have that check yes, check no. And so nonverbal feedback is, let's see. One of the things that I use a ton when we are in Zoom meetings, just because it gives me a really quick check-in. I had somebody yesterday that, you know, you guys talked about using it for voting, but for me, it gives me a really quick check-in to kind of see where people are and opens up the conversation. So that's how I use it. Our nonverbal feedback shows up at the bottom of your participants window, and it has to be turned on in your Zoom settings. You also have meeting reactions, which I don't tend to use as much because I just don't, I don't tend to see them. I know people do use them, so they're on, but I don't tend to use them as much as I use the participant feedback. And so both of them are a really great way to get your audience a little more engaged and be able to participate. So here's when we talked about security, allowing removed participants to rejoin. I have this off so that they can't. So if I remove you from a meeting, you wouldn't be able to rejoin. I won't remove you as a sample because you can't come back. Hide participant profile pictures in a meeting. And this is something that would just keep I wouldn't see any pictures. I would just see your initials. And so like a lot of you don't have profile pictures. Some of you do, a lot of you don't. In Meeting Advanced is where you find breakout rooms. And so breakout rooms is one of the things that really just make life so much easier. And so I'm going to give you a quick look at breakout rooms and how those work. So breakout rooms tend to be, they have to be enabled in your zoom.us account. And so if they're not, you don't have that functionality. You see, when you are the host, you have the breakout room option in your toolbar. If you're not the host, you don't see it. I mean, and so that's the other kind of wonky thing is breakout rooms feel like a mystery if you are just a participant in a meeting because you never ever see them. So once you turn on breakout rooms and then start a meeting, you will always see the breakout rooms in your meeting. All right. So when we want to set up a breakout room, they do give us a tutorial, but you have two options. You can either assign participants automatically or manually. And there is, and I just last night found a tutorial for how to assign ahead of time. And so I'm going to play with that. When I played with it earlier, you had to actually all be on the same domain and all have accounts, which doesn't work for me. And it wouldn't work for you either because your students won't have accounts. But the tutorial I found makes it sound like you don't need to. And I did not have a chance to play with it last night. So that's my goal, is to play with it. So it would be sweet if we could assign our learners to breakouts. But you can either do it automatically, which means if I send you out to breakout rooms automatically, you will just go out to breakout rooms. If I, and Beverly, I do see you off over in the corner. I'm just saying, don't make me turn off annotations. So automatically, I can make as many breakout rooms as I want, and it'll do the math for me. And so it'll tell me that I have, like, you know, 1 participant per room or 2 participants per room or whatever. Can't believe you guys. Right. So manually, I can make the rooms, and then once I say create rooms, then I can go down and I can assign. And so you'll see here, I can assign people to a room. And if I click on that, then I can go through and I can just, it's fast. I mean, I can click and assign people really quickly. Where you run into problems is when you start to get a lot of people. And then it just takes a little more time. If you are planning on using breakout rooms with a lot of people, I would do it with a co-host. You're fine, Beverly. I was teasing you. It helps if you can have a co-host or else give the students something to do while you're assigning them. Breakout rooms are not recorded. And so when you do assign students to breakout rooms, I recommend using something like Google Slides or something, or a shared Google document, so that your students can provide that, you know, they can chat, and you can see what they're doing. You know, they have questions to answer and you can see what they're doing that way. So the other things to do to really make your breakout rooms move smoother is when you've created a breakout room, click on your options. So you create rooms, it gives you this window, and you'll see that your rooms don't open until you open all rooms. Once you've created rooms, they stay until you either end the meeting or you click on recreate. And so I typically do a breakout room and I keep people in it indefinitely. You can't see my settings document. So Beverly, what are you seeing right now? I'm sharing a slide right now. Okay. Group dynamics. Would larger groups than we usually have in the classroom be a good move? I've found, how many groups do you typically have in the classroom, Bart? Or how large are groups? Okay. I guess 2 or 3 is a nice number in a breakout room. 4 is a nice number in a breakout room. Basically, you want to be able to give the instruction and then give them enough time to be able to answer the question or reflect on the question or whatever. So 2 or 3 is good. The other thing that I have found, if the breakout room is too big, it's hard to have the be able to get everybody to participate fully. You end up with, you know, some people that don't talk or don't share. Let me see. So one of the things that you want to do before you open your breakout rooms for the first time is click on your options. And if you've ever been in breakout rooms, and you'll notice that you get that invite in most cases. And so you get that, you know, it says join breakout room. People don't see that. If they're looking at, like, if you've pulled up the slides for this presentation and you're looking at them independently while I'm, you know, while I'm talking, which is fine, you won't see that pop up to go into the breakout room. And so you will end up not seeing that. If you click move all participants into breakout rooms automatically, they will go automatically and you won't have that problem. And so that's a really great, I mean, it makes life so much better. I always allow participants to return to the main room at any time, mainly just because if for whatever reason, you know, everybody in a room falls out, the remaining person can come back to the main room. They can also reach out to you at any time, and so you have options. And so lots of good things there. You can set a timer, and so you can say, I'm going to send you to breakout rooms for 30 minutes, and then you can come, you know, we can come back, and it'll automatically close. And then there is a countdown after you close the breakout rooms, because you can close them, and you can set the timer to pop up and say, there's, you know, rooms will close in so many seconds or so many minutes. So those options are really great. And so checking on the options is like clicking on the 3 dots. Definitely do it. Let's see. So those are kind of the ins and the outs. When we're in a breakout room, I typically give people expectations. And so we kind of have standard operating procedures where, you know, one person is invited to lead the discussion, a person is invited to take notes. Each room, I typically use designated Google Slides to record notes on, and you find your breakout room to collaborate. I have people add their participant names, and then I highlight the name of the person or I have them highlight the name of the person who will share out. So that's kind of how I structure my standard operating procedures when we're in a breakout room. It really just depends on you as an individual, you know, kind of what you want your students to do. When you're in a breakout room, you'll need to allow them to share screens, and so you'll want to make sure that participants can share screens. And so having that capability to share screens is important if that is, you know, if there's something they need to be able to show each other. I also make sure people have these slides open before they go into the breakout room so that they have those slides open, because once you're in a breakout room, it's really hard to share to the whole group, like the whole group chat. You have chat in the breakout room, but it's also not recorded. I mean, it's just, there's kind of wonky. So the breakout room isn't recorded, neither is the chat. But you can go into any breakout rooms. How do I make sure they're using it? I can see. So let me get out of this. And that's that. Okay. So let me show you guys real quick a sample, and I think I closed all my samples from yesterday. I closed files, you guys. It's unheard of. Actually, I restarted my computer. It's also unheard of. So I'll show you a couple quick samples, and then we'll ship you guys out into a breakout room so you have that experience. Okay. So when I did some work on a primary sources training, and this is a group that I worked with, we did lots of different things. And so I had them open this slide deck. I shipped them off into breakout rooms, and then they were instructed to select an American treasure and then answer the questions about it. And so each person did not have to do the same treasure. They could go in. When I'm on the outside observing, I can skim through these slides and I can see at a glance what people are doing. And so I can see very easily, you know, what is happening. And so if there's a group that is not doing anything, like this group right here, I just don't think there was anybody in room 5. But I could go into room 5 and I could say, hey, I can also pop in and have conversations based on, you know, what they're doing. And so this is like a scavenger hunt that I've shared with this group. This is one that we did where it was multi. So this was a 3 trip to the breakout room session. And so in the first trip, they did the observe, reflect, and question over this picture right here. The second trip, then they came back. They came back and we talked about the things that they observed, and you know, we looked at their pictures and you know, talked about their. And so one of the people shared. Then I shipped them back into a breakout room and had them. I gave them more information. So they had information about the image from the Library of Congress. And so they were able to go in and answer their questions and also generate new questions. And then, so we came back and we talked about that. And then this is my favorite. Let's see. They dropped, I put them back and I just asked them some reflection questions. So what did you learn from this activity? And so these were teachers, obviously, so it was more on that. But like one of the things here is they each compared, they only looked at their picture, and then we did the whole group reflection. So when we came back, you know, we did that whole group reflection. And so it was really, you know, a great way to do that hook and see that there's more to the story, hear the other group's perspectives, et cetera, et cetera. And so this is a kind of activity that allowed us to really have good discussion. One of the things I find with groups and breakout rooms is it really works much better to keep the same small groups for a while than it does to mix them up each time. And so like in this example, like this first time, you know, sending them out, it takes them a little bit of time to get their groove. And I'm not talking like 5 minutes, but I mean like to make sure that they have their slides up and they kind of know each other and they know what they're doing and they get it figured out. So it takes more time that first breakout session to get their groove. And then the second session, when I send them back, and so I kept the groups the same, they were much quicker because they kind of had come up with a system. This is a process that we did together ahead of time. So like, you know, obviously you see I don't have a ton of guidance on the slides for them. That's because it's something we did before I put them in breakout rooms. So for the slides, they are just in a browser tab. And so they are something that I typically do. Let me see why I can't find what I want. So they are something that we typically do. I share I can share, I would share them in my Google Classroom for the assignment. And then I would also share them as and then I would share the link in the Zoom chat so that you have it in the Zoom chat too. So let me find what I'm looking for again. All right, and so I'm going to share this. So this is a shared Google Doc. And so this was something that before I started using slides, I used Google Docs, which is fine. And so I'll drop you guys all in breakout rooms, and we will. So here are the shared notes. And so if everybody clicks on that, you should all, in the link in the discussion, you should all have this document. And so once you're in there, and it's shared so that anybody can edit, so nobody needs to be logged in or anything. So it's just kind of random. But I could attach this to an assignment and say, you know, here's the shared notes, here's the shared slides. So I have this. Now I'm going to make breakout rooms real quick. And so I will go in, and I've got 46 of you guys. So we are going to have, we're going to have 12 breakout rooms. And so, and I'm automatically assigning you, not because I don't care, but just because it's just easier that way. I'm making sure my options are set so that you guys will all move automatically. So that's all good. And when I look, everybody looks good. Awesome. Okay, so what will happen next is I will tell you guys that we are going to go into breakout rooms, and we're going to discuss how you're sharing resources with your learners and what support do you need. And so you're going to find your room number, and then you're going to add your names to that room. Do highlight the name of the person who will share, and then in your discussion notes, note down any discussion notes. Don't start typing yet because you're not in a room yet. So I will make, so you all have the capability to share your screen. So when you're in the breakout rooms, you'll want to make sure we use those good breakout room practices by making sure that we, you know, somebody takes the lead, somebody takes notes. You have a box on these Google Docs, and so I didn't do it as a slide in this situation. It's shared notes, and you guys will be able to have a conversation. So I will ship you out to breakout rooms right now. I will be watching the notes. You can also call for help, and it'll send me a note, and I will come in